Trust me, I'm not being overdramatic when I say that making other people like you or making friends is so much easier than you thought, even for introverts. The ability to make friends might sometimes come across as a superpower that only the smartest, most charismatic and extrovert people have. But in reality, being able to make friends is something we can all do regardless of who we are and where we come from. Today, I want to share with you the 5 easiest ways to make other people like you. The simple answer to get to that goal is to make other people feel important, appreciated, and taken seriously. But that's easier said than done. So let's get into those 5 tactics that you can apply immediately after having watched this video. The first tip isn't going to break the internet for its innovativeness or creativeness, but it's probably the simplest way to start a flowing conversation either with a stranger or someone you already know. At the same time, it will help you to set a positive tone at the beginning of the meeting and make the other person feel good and appreciated right from the start. You can simply achieve that by smiling, by genuinely smiling when meeting others, when you start a conversation, or even when you talk to someone on the phone. Trust me, a true smile can be heard in someone's voice and felt even if you don't see the other person. Because a smile is carried over to your voice and eventually is being reflected in a positive attitude that the other person recognizes quite well. And that's not just me saying this, but it's proven by science. There are multiple studies on the benefits of smiling in a social context, saying that smiling makes you more approachable, helps to build trust, and even makes yourself happier and less stressed. So to make new friends, simply smile. Just try it out when you meet someone for the first time or even in any other meeting. Put a genuine smile onto your face before you start the conversation and let the magic happen. But what if you don't feel like smiling right now? Well, just force it. Even if a fake smile is not exactly the same as a real one, it will most likely do the job. I mean, a fake smile is better than looking into a grumpy face, right? What you could also do is to engage with other people you like and that make you smile quite naturally, or just laugh at yourself or at a joke. Having started a conversation with a smile, you've already made the first step for the other person to like you. Now, moving into the conversation, the main thing you should do is to act like a dog. At least that's what Dale Carnegie says in his bestseller, How to Win Friends and Influence People. But let me explain. Acting like a dog does not mean you should be submissive, playful, or just waiting for and executing orders. Or of course not. By acting like a dog, it's meant to be genuinely interested in the other person. That may simply start with saying their name at the beginning and maybe even throughout the conversation. By that, you show that you know who the other person is and that you appreciate their uniqueness. Or as Dale Carnegie put, a person's name is to that person the sweetest and most important sound in any language. But there's more to acting like a dog. Be completely unselfish and do something voluntarily for the other person. Even if it's just sharing information or documents that you have and the other person finds valuable, or making connections to other people. It does not have to be a huge task, but also smaller favors add up. If you want to make friends or make others like you, you should support them and spend the required time and energy to do so. I mean, who does not like to be supported, cheered up, or maybe even challenged if that brings you closer to your goal? And that's also what a dog is doing with their owner. So you should too in order to make friends. Giving without expecting something in return will create loyalty, thankfulness, and enthusiasm with the other person. Whilst you act like a dog and focus on providing value and being interested in the other person, don't forget tip number 3, which is again not a super groundbreaking tip, but it's very often neglected and not very well understood and practiced by many people. It's active listening. Because if people do not feel listened to, they just will stop to engage and share information with you as well. In some studies, active listening was measured by avoiding interruption, maintaining interest, postponing evaluation, organizing information, and showing interest. And that can be done verbally and non-verbally. I will come to the verbal part in a minute, but being a good active listener can also be supported by different non-verbal cues. That's, for example, showing an appropriate, open and encouraging and not closed body language and posture, demonstrating positive and open facial expressions, eye contact, attentive silence, reflecting back the other's feelings and emotions, and summarizing or playing back the speaker's last few words and their purpose. To put it simple, it's all about channeling your complete attention and interest into that conversation in person and not being distracted by any other thoughts, but purely listening to the other person and comprehending what's being said. I've already mentioned verbal cues that also belong to active listening, which are my fourth tip to make other people like you. And that's as simple as asking questions, but not just any questions. Rather, they should be smart, interesting, and appreciative. Now, if you have been listening actively, this shouldn't be a problem. Your ultimate goal is to make the other person feel important and taken seriously. So just think about which questions they would enjoy answering. And maybe at the same time, the answers would give you, again, more information about what they like. In general, you should encourage the other person to talk about themselves, their accomplishments, and what they value. It's not about you, so don't try to be interesting yourself, but rather be calm, listening, and show interest in the other person. If you struggle to come up with good questions, you could just start with following up on anything that has been said so far. If the other person talks about a project they had worked on or a trip that they did, ask about details. What was it about? Where did they go? What did they experience? Or what was their greatest learning or most exciting experience during that time? Quite quickly, you will notice on which topics and aspects the other person spends more time to elaborate on and where less. And that's your cue what they value more or less, and where you might want to dig deeper. Following all the previously mentioned tips to make others like you, you should always be empathetic and compassionate. Brené Brown, an American professor, lecturer, and author, has been studying empathy for the last 2 decades and differentiates both empathy and compassion as follows.
I make a distinction between empathy and compassion. So empathy I say is a skill set. It can be taught, learned, observable,
I was just trying to think
measurable.
about that. What's the difference?
It's really, I think, a skill set, or it's a collection of skill sets. Compassion, I think, is more of a belief system.
She also cites Teresa Weissman, a nursing scholar, who defines the 4 qualities of empathy as being able to take the perspective of the other, at the same time staying out of judgment, recognizing emotions in other people, and communicating that. It's basically feeling with people. Do not lose focus and think about what you want to achieve, but rather put yourself in the other person's shoes and think about what they want to achieve. Being compassionate simply means being empathetic and taking actions, whilst having set clear boundaries. In practice, that means feeling with the other person and trying to support them with advice, help, or information, but also knowing when to stop and letting again the other person move forward on their own. In the end, you don't want to be exploited, but just show your genuine interest and that you're caring about the other. Even if you have considered all of the 5 tips to make someone like you, remember that building relationships takes time. That's why it's even more important to choose your interactions wisely. So watch this video next, where you will learn how doing and consuming less will actually make you a lot happier.